time for another episode of The Oil Stream with Dustin Nielsen and Tom Gazzola, presented by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen.
Hey, happy Saturday, everybody, and welcome to a Saturday episode of The Oil Stream. Nielsen and Gazzola brought to you by Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen, now open in St. Albert, along with Tamarack, Emerald Hills, Clairview, Northwest Landing, Granville, Ellerslie, South Trail, Windermere, Lloyd, Red Deer, Grand Prairie, pretty much everywhere you want to get your hands on a delicious playoffs Popeye's chicken sandwich. They got you covered. The regular season is now behind us, Mr. Gazzola. Great job covering the team for the past year, buddy.
Thank you. Likewise, Dusty Nielsen. What a tumultuous, weird, frustrating, and fun season.
I know.
One like we have never witnessed before. Finally, it's over.
It's strange how they got there, and we'll get to it in a second. We'll take a look kind of the three big storylines from the regular season. But Tommy, what do you think of the way they finished? We did an episode Thursday. They win a couple of pretty entertaining games to kind of wrap things up. Nice, even without McDavid and Draisaitl and Nurse, just to kind of continue that positive momentum and the good vibe around the team heading into the postseason.
Yeah, very nonchalant in those last two games, and they still find ways to win. That's nice. And yesterday, without their two big guns, that's nice as well. Yeah, I mean, the 11-2-1 stretch in April is really what impresses me the most. And they beat good teams. And
yes, they did.
Really, really good against some of the best teams in the Western Conference and some good teams from the East, too. So I think that the Oilers' confidence level should be very high right now. I know that they're kind of careful with their words, and, I can respect that. It was a strong finish. The last two games, I don't think we can really take much away from those ones, to be honest with you, because they were kind of halfway on the gas pedal there, and they still found
which is fine. I mean, right? Like, we weren't going to take anything away from those bad boys, wins or loss. So they won it. We still don't have to talk about anything that happened in it. It's kind of the perfect scenario, really, right? Like, it's
exactly. And like we said it on the pregame show, it's like, okay, we'd like to see them play the right way and not have bad habits come in, or those TV turns, as Matt Cassian likes to call them. And they half-assed it and still won and I don't think anybody's mad. Now, if they half-ass it on Monday, that's a big problem.
That'll be a big problem for sure. Were you surprised? The only thing that I even think is even remotely noteworthy of discussion coming out of the last two nights was not giving Smith one of those two games. Did that surprise you a little bit?
It did. And I thought he would be playing last night. When I saw it was Koskinen again, I was like, all right, well, Mike Smith must feel ready. And the other thing, too,
because if he wanted to go, he would have gone, right? Like, you would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, too, and listen, this is just me kind of rambling through my mind going, well, maybe he's a little nicked up or something's, not at 100%. He just wants to give it another day, because how many times did we see him grimacing while he was getting up after, like, going down to make a save?
Well, and he took that puck kind of up in here on Tuesday, right? Like, I think it was just an extra maintenance day for Smith, essentially.
And Dusty, talking to people from the Coyotes who had him there for years, they're like, well, he's intense, and he's the kind of guy that if he's not 100% in his mind and doesn't feel his body is where it needs to be, he shuts it down. So maybe he kind of took that mantra into yesterday and was like, you know what? I'll give it another day. I feel good about my game. No big deal.
Oh, he should feel good about his game. They should feel good about their game overall. 14-0-1 in their last 15 games at home, which is a pretty remarkable run down the stretch. And you mentioned it, like they beat some really good teams. I remember, they'd been playing okay, and then they had that 7-game stretch coming up. And I remember driving home from my show one day, and I hear Lowtie going, I think they might only go 2-4-1. Like, he was paranoid of that 7-game stretch, which I think a lot of people may have been, because, they've been doing pretty well. And then you're like, oh, man, there's some good playoff teams that they're going to be playing. And they came through it with flying colors, Tommy. And I think that sort of 6-7 game stretch there, what did it start with? The Kings, ended with Colorado, had Colorado in there twice. The Golden Knights, Nashville, that stretch there. Minnesota was really the only sort of blemish in that entire stretch, I believe. I feel like that was sort of the stretch where people are like, okay, like this team might be able to do something.
Absolutely. And that's probably where a lot of their confidence right now is emulating from, or coming from. And why shouldn't it? I mean, you went toe-to-toe with some of the best. The Minnesota game is kind of interesting. Like, the Wild are the Oilers' kryptonite because remember the next night they go into Nashville, who had been playing really well, and they shut down the Preds 4-0, and then they go and they beat the Golden Knights 4-0 the next game. Like, that was a great response. And, these guys talk about, well, good teams don't lose 2 in a row. Good teams don't lose 3 in a row. They went and lost, they went 2-14-2 in that 16-game stretch. They had a 6-game losing streak, 7-game winless streak. And then they were saying, well, good teams don't lose 2 in a row. And it's like, well, you lost 13 games basically in a 3 or 4 week window.
Yeah.
But then, they pull a complete 180 a few months later and just absolutely tear it up in April and the end of March.
Couple of comments sliding in on the live stream today. And of course, you can find the live stream on my Twitter account. Also at YouTube, just search Nielsen Media over there. And if you are watching, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We'll obviously have a ton of content throughout the playoffs. Beatles Hey Dude on Twitter says, great show, you two jive turkeys. Did you call us the jive turkey? What's going on there? And then Shock Jock 80 says, Kings are going to be tough, but I think the Oilers have the horses to get it done, and we'll start to dabble in that here a little bit later on in this episode. But, Tommy, let's take a look at the 3 biggest storylines. I heard you talking about kind of that one storyline in the pregame show yesterday, and I think I would have to agree with you, so it'll probably be number 1 on this list. But the 3 biggest storylines for the Oilers this season, you can take number 1. I'll drop a number 2.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have sounded that way. And then you can do number 3. Okay, so Tommy, what's the biggest storyline this year for the Oilers?
Well, I'll wait for you to drop a number 2 and I'll walk away, okay?
I don't know why I said that.
That's okay, pal. We all have those moments. And I'm going to go with a number 1 here. And I'll say Jay Woodcroft coming in, and that really turned things around. 26-9-3, he finishes up as a first-time coach in the NHL and head coach, obviously. He got them to buy in. Like, I don't know if it was them getting the shock of the wake-up call or them finally realizing that they can't mess around anymore, or was it Jay Woodcroft implementing those subtle little tweaks and changes, and then they bought in and they got that initial bump and they started to see that it was working for them, the backtracking, the attention to detail in defensive zone, eliminating turnovers at both blue lines. Like, it feels like it finally sunk in with these guys, or it could be a combination of those things that I pointed out, and it just started to click. And when you get results, Dusty, from trying something new, and you're like, oh, this works. You keep doing it, and you get better at it, better and better, and it builds and it builds and it builds. It feels like that's what happened. So a lot of credit to Jay Woodcroft and Dave Manson for just implementing some tweaks and changing things up, and then getting these guys to buy in, and then having that success and turning it into a great run. Like, that to me was number 1 in terms of importance. How about you for this wonderful number 2?
Yeah, just quickly on number 1, one more time. I just, you're right. I mean, I don't think anybody could debate that the coaching change was the biggest turning point of the season for the Edmonton Oilers. And to me, it just they bought in instantly to what it's like they were wanting somebody like Jay Woodcroft to take over from the moment Derek Ryan first laid out those comments, and Derek Ryan doubled down on it this week. The team just all of a sudden, it was like a team that in the players' opinions wasn't being managed the way that it should, for a lot of those guys. So that stood out for me. And my other question, my follow-up question to this on the biggest storyline of the season is, if they don't make that coaching change, Tommy, do you think they squeak into the playoffs? Do you think they miss the playoffs? What happens if Ken Holland just said, nope, Dave Tippett's my guy, we're riding this out to the end of the year?
I feel like they might have teased and kind of pushed towards maybe a
wild card.
But I almost feel like they would go the Winnipeg route, where it ends up being just a disappointing season. Because remember, they came out of the All-Star break, they'd been playing really good, and then they dropped those 2 games. It was Chicago, and there was one other one. It was a winnable game.
Yeah, I was looking at it yesterday. You're right. There was those 2 games right there, yeah.
And they dropped them, and then all of a sudden there's a coaching change, and you're like, oh, wow, okay. So this had been obviously something that was on the mind of Ken Holland. Dusty, I don't think they would have gone on it. I don't think they would have made the playoffs ultimately. I think they would have just missed, and we would have been talking about the misery in Edmonton, and this would have been a post-mortem today.
All right, number 2 storyline for the season. Of course, we'll get your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day here a little bit later on. Kind of take a look at this first round schedule. Late starts for the Oilers and the Kings, I think, as expected. Number 2 for me would be the signing of Evander Kane because it's on so many levels it impacted this team. Like you sign Evander Kane and we all sit here and go, well, it comes with some baggage off the ice. On the ice, he's exactly what they need. And it turns out the baggage has been tucked away so far since he's been here. And on the ice, he has been exactly what they needed. He's fit in extremely well with Connor McDavid. He's a forward that will step in for his teammates. He'll start shit on his own. And on top of that, it allowed them to move Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to the third line down the middle, which has allowed them to actually establish a legitimate top 9 for the first time in years. So, I mean, I think most years, most teams, the Vander Kane storyline could very well be the number 1 storyline in a lot of teams. But when you've got the coaching change at the top with Jake Woodcroft, it's obviously going to be the headliner here. But, without Woodcroft, they aren't where they are. And without the Evander Kane signing, Tommy, they don't have home ice in the first round of the playoffs.
Totally fair. I mean, he's been, as advertised, he's come into town. He's kept everything in check. By all accounts, he's been a very good soldier for the group, and he needs to be. He wants to prolong his NHL career. He's obviously in some hot water. We know that the case with the Sharks is ongoing, and there's some interesting twists with scheduling for that because they need to get that hearing taken care of before he becomes a free agent. Like it's it could be a distraction. It sounds like it's been kept to the side, which is good. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves either, Dusty, with the Evander Kane thing. I know we're going to talk about it whenever it happens, that it comes to an end.
We'll get a few episodes out of that bad boy, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But he has been everything that they needed. And then so it's been a mutually beneficial relationship, and we'll see where it goes.
All right, so number 1, coaching change, Jay Woodcroft on board. Number 2, Evander Kane signing. Tommy, I know where I'd go with number 3. I'm very interested to see where you put number 3. What do you think is the third biggest storyline for the Oilers this season?
For me, the third biggest storyline for the goalie is the goalies. The third storyline is the goalies because these goalies were not performing at an NHL level. I really think the reemergence of Mike Smith, Koskinen also kind of finding his game and getting into a groove was absolutely crucial to this team turning it around. Yes, the coaching staff coming in with Dave Tippett going out and Dave Madsen and Jake Woodcroft coming in. That was important. Absolutely, Evander Kane coming in was important. But you can have the system, you can have the goal-scoring ability and the depth at forward, but if you can't make saves, you're shit out of luck. And Mike Smith finding his game has been absolutely huge. Mikko Koskinen kind of guiding them through in tough times was absolutely huge. And both guys are playing well going into the postseason. To me, that's a huge factor and will continue to be in the postseason. Let's see what happens. But that was a huge question mark going into the year. It was a huge disappointment for a good chunk of the year. And now we're at the point of saying this might be a steady part of the lineup.
Yeah, that was my answer. Mike Smith resurgence probably would have been what I said, but Koskinen had that nice little stretch right before Smith got hot again that kind of got the team really going in the Wood. Like Koskinen was very much responsible for the early success in the Woodcroft era, and Smith has obviously kind of been the closer that came in here and shut things down the stretch for this team. So yeah, I think goaltending in a couple of different ways, probably number 3 on that list. We're going to take a quick look at the schedule here, and obviously we'll get into Oilers and Kings, but let's get to your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day, brought to you by our friend Ken Morrison. Give him a call, whether you're buying, selling, or you just want to snoop around a little bit. 780-993-4815, or you can visit his website, www.kenrmorrison.com. I do believe I saw on Facebook he was the number 1 Remax agent in the city for charity donations in the past year. And I don't know if he counts donating to the Oil Stream as charity, because I kind of would. But it certainly probably would have helped his number. But congratulations to Ken for doing great stuff for the community. That's awesome. And Tommy, what's the question today, bud?
Bravo, Ken. Well done yet again. The Ken Morrison Remax Excellence question of the day is this, Dusty. After what we witnessed in the last 2 postseasons, has this group learned its lesson, and will it get results this time around in the playoffs?
Weird thing is to get better results than last time, you need to win 1, which is crazy. But the saying always goes, Tommy, whether you believe, I don't believe it's a cliche. It's easy to say though, but part of you has to go through losing to learn how to win. Not many organizations, not many teams just burst onto the scene and all of a sudden are champions. Like that's just, look at Tampa Bay, for goodness sakes. Tampa Bay suffered the most embarrassing first round loss in arguably NHL history and then bounced back with a couple of Stanley Cup wins. So I would think, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody else with this group because, Hyman's new and Kane's new and some of these younger guys are still sort of finding their way and a bunch of the guys on the blue line weren't here last year. But for me, that comes down to McDavid and Draisaitl and Darnell Nurse, assuming he's healthy. The core of these teams, same with Tampa when they failed miserably a few years back. It's the core of the team that needs to finally learn how to win and maybe play more as a team as opposed to what we saw over the last few years where Dave Tippett was running McDavid and Draisaitl out there for 27, 28 minutes a night in a playoff game. So I do think they would have learned from the last couple of years, mostly last season. I don't know about that bubble series with Chicago. But I think they would have learned from last year as far as the most important guys on this team go. It's a tough read because it's a different coach as well. So it's not a super great comparison compared to Dave Tippett, Dave Tippett took a lot of criticism with that series last year. And I don't think if the Oilers lose this year, whether it be the first round or the second round or wherever, I don't think we're looking at going, wow, Jay Woodcroft was significantly outcoached. Like, I'd be surprised if that's the case. So I'm going to say that they learned from it and we'll see better results this year than we have over the last couple seasons.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's inevitable that players this good with that type of mind for the game can't figure it out. And I think that with the hardships of the last two postseason runs or entries into the postseason, I think that there seems to be a quiet confidence, Dusty, and they know the task. They know the shame that they felt from losing the last 2 years in quick fashion, that this year they finally start to piece it together. I don't know how far that takes them.
Yeah.
But I think they start putting in the building blocks to becoming a very good team, contender-esque team. And obviously you need tweaks here and there to put you over the top. And that could happen.
Yeah, it's not like we look at this team and go, juggernaut, absolute wagon. Colorado doesn't know what they're in for. That's not how anybody's viewing this team, but I think we are all viewing them much differently than we did last season, and we should. There's a different coaching staff. They've got two more legitimate top six forwards that have made a significant impact on this team this year, and we'll see how the blue line adds up. But it's not like there aren't any weaknesses. I mean, if Mike Smith all of a sudden stumbles, they could be in trouble. If the blue line can't handle some of this playoff pressure, like example, that Minnesota game where they just seemed overwhelmed the entire time, then maybe they're in a little bit of trouble. But I do think the expectations for this team are justifiably better than what they were over the last few years. That is your Ken Morrison Remax question of the day. Tommy's schedule is out. Nice setup every second day. 8 o'clock starts. I know I saw some people bitching. I get it. I mean, not a lot of kids are going to be watching these 8 o'clock starts, which does kind of suck. But I understand, from a television perspective, they want the Leafs on the early game. So you got Matthews in the early game. Then you got McDavid coming up right after. So, I mean, that's just how you're going to have to deal with it. Mike Johnson on my show said something very interesting on Friday, and he views the Oilers as a heavy favorite against the Los Angeles Kings. Tommy, and I told Mike, I said, well, maybe just because we're close to it here in Edmonton, we've seen some recent defeats. Maybe that's not how I view it. The Kings have played pretty darn good down the stretch as well. Not a 14-0-1 record at home like the Oilers, and the Oilers are going to have home ice, but what would be like the Oilers are a blank favorite against the Kings? How would you describe them as a favorite against the Kings? A slight favorite, a big favorite? I just don't see them as a heavy favorite against the Kings.
No, not heavy. And you know what, Johnny's a smart hockey guy. He knows what he's talking about. But knowing Edmonton's weaknesses, witnessing what we did all year long up close, and the Kings played the Oilers pretty tight this year. That's the other thing. Like those weren't blowout games. Yeah, Edmonton went 3-1 against LA, but those were pretty close games. I'm curious to see what kind of strategy Todd McLellan comes up with to try to stymie the Oilers too. That'll be a key factor. I think the Oilers are a respectable favorite in this series.
Yeah.
But I'm not discounting the Kings whatsoever because they've proven that they stick to their systems. They believe in their systems. And when you have belief, you can get a lot accomplished. They do have some skill. They have some very good players on that club. And if their goaltending gets hot, it could be trouble for the Oilers. So I would say the Oilers are a respectable favorite. Not heavy, not slight, a respectable one.
We haven't locked in any predictions just yet, and we'll probably save those to, Tommy have his pregame show on Monday. I'll have my radio show Monday and things along those lines. But, I mean, I see the Oilers as I view this. I'll have to look at it a little bit closer, but I'm kind of off the top of my head, I'm thinking 6 games. I think a 6 games Oilers victory isn't a crazy. The one area where I think the Oilers should be able to take advantage of it. And you're right. I mean, if one of their goaltenders, if anybody's goalie gets hot in the playoffs, I mean, they're going to cause some problems. Kopitar and Danault down the middle, very intriguing matchup against McDavid and Draisaitl. I love that. Like, as far as playoff series matchups go, that's going to be great. But I think the Oilers should eat up that Kings blue line.
Yeah.
Like, nothing against Durzi, but when you're looking at some of these guys on the blue line without Drew Doughty, that Kings blue line is average at best, in my opinion, without their number one, which is how you should describe it for most teams when they don't have their number one defenseman. But if Hyman and Kane and Puljujarvi and Yamamoto and McDavid and Draisaitl and the Nuge line, if those guys can't make things difficult for that Kings blue line, then you don't deserve to get to the second round. Like, I think that could end up being the difference in this series.
That's kind of one of the things that I was thinking is attack that blue line with speed. Attack.
Yeah.
Attack. We heard Ryan Nugent-Hopkins say that he likes how the Oilers come at you in waves now. Yeah, they do. They actually do, which is ideal. And, I was like, hey, you're right. They do attack in waves. So put that into effect against LA, and that defense, in theory, will bend and bend and bend. And eventually, if you do keep those waves going, it'll break and you'll get your chances. And listen, Cal Peterson and Jonathan Quick are not Connor Hellebuck. You put the two of them together and they might not even be Connor Hellebuck, who stymied the Oilers last year.
Hellebuck was brilliant last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was absolutely incredible. So, it's an interesting discussion. And obviously, we're going to have a ton of time both on, online, and we're going to be on, Tommy, where were you on today? NHL Network, talking about the series a little bit with the guys?
Yeah, with the boys on Sirius XM, NHL Network, the hot stove.
The hot stove, nice. That's hot stoving it up. That's good. So we're going to have a ton of coverage. Obviously, you'll see a few more Oil Stream and 5s kicking around as well. Tommy will have that pregame for game 1. Tommy, 8 o'clock start. What are you guys rolling at 6? 2-hour pregame, I would think?
Yeah, we're going to be doing 2-hour pregame shows on TSN 1260. So basically, as soon as Gregor's show's done, we'll come in and we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage. Dusty, we're all over this series. You know how we roll. And so it's going to be a busy week and hopefully a busy
maybe even more.
Even more. Let's hope so. It should be fun. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, it's we're really looking forward to this. Should be a good time. Also looking forward to golfing today at the Quarry, buddy. So I'll see you in about less than 2 hours, my man.
Bring your A game, my friend.
I don't have an A game.
Neither do I.
I'll bring my C+ game, and we'll just have a good time. All right, how's that sound?
First couple rounds on me. All right, pal.
All right, perfect. That's going to do it for another episode of the Oil Stream. Make sure you subscribe to that podcast feed. A lot of content coming out there over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, however this long this run goes for the Edmonton Oilers. Hopefully it's at least 2 or 3, 4 or 5 weeks. That'd be nice. And tell your friends about the Oil Stream so they can also watch here on Twitter, on YouTube, and listen to the podcast. We'll be back with more content early next week.